My name is Jonathan Williams, and for 7 years I believed I had everything a man could want. A warm house in Portland, a steady job designing custom furniture, 2 golden retrievers that greeted me like royalty every night, and Claire, my wife, my compass, my closest friend. She smiled like spring sunlight and had this habit of dancing barefoot in our kitchen on Sunday mornings, hair tangled, coffee in hand, singing something off-key and beautiful. I used to think she was the kind of woman you built a life around. Now, I wonder if I ever really knew her at all. The unraveling didn't begin with a scream or a fight. It began with a quiet moment. A stupid, well-meaning phone call, the kind a husband makes when he's thinking of his wife, wanting to remind her she's loved. She'd said she was volunteering again, 3rd weekend in a row at the shelter down near Eugene. Said they needed overnight help, the animals were stressed, short on staff. I admired that. I really did. So I called. It wasn't even a big thing, not at first. I just wanted to pass along her allergy meds, she'd forgotten them again, and maybe hear her voice. But when the woman at the shelter answered, I didn't even get the chance. She was warm, polite, confused. Claire. Oh, I don't think she's been around since, maybe January. That was 5 months ago. I remember staring at the phone like it had just betrayed me. Like it had spoken out of turn and ripped a hole straight through the fabric of my life. That night, I sat in the dark, in our kitchen, the same one she used to dance in, and I felt something I hadn't in years, cold. Not just physical cold, but the kind that seeps into your bones, the kind that comes when the truth finally knocks, and you realize the door was always slightly open. The following Saturday, I followed her. And that's when everything, every assumption, every tender memory, every I love you, broke apart like glass. Claire and I met the way good things often begin, by accident. A chance encounter at a local art fair in the Pearl District, where she was selling handmade candles scented with things like Rain on Concrete and October Memory. I remember teasing her about the names, standing there with a black coffee and an eyebrow raised. She smiled. Well, do you remember October? She asked. And I did. I always would. There was something unapologetically alive about her. Claire wasn't the loudest person in the room, but she was always the one you noticed. The kind of woman who laughed with her whole body, who made strangers feel like old friends, who'd cry at wildlife documentaries and forget her umbrella every time it rained. Her favorite boots had a hole in the heel for 3 years, and she refused to replace them. I like things that wear their history, she once told me. Things that don't pretend. We moved in together after 8 months. Our apartment was tiny, cracked windows, a sink that groaned when you turned the faucet, but it had light. So much light. On Sundays, we'd lie on the living room floor, letting the sun warm our faces through the blinds, limbs tangled like tree roots. She used to hum while she read, soft and rhythmic. It made me feel like the world had a heartbeat. We got married under a canopy of autumn leaves, just outside Sisters, Oregon. She wore a green velvet dress, barefoot, a wreath of wildflowers in her hair. I remember the way her eyes found mine in the middle of her vows, no tears, just this quiet, steady certainty. Like she'd been waiting her whole life to say those words, and now that they were here, she wasn't afraid. And me? I wasn't just in love. I was grateful. That's the only word that ever really fit. I built her a studio at the back of our new house when we moved to Portland. Gutted out the old shed myself. Installed skylights, painted the walls white, set up shelves for her oils and wicks and glass jars. She cried when she saw it. Said no one had ever done anything so thoughtful for her. For a long time, she spent her mornings there in old paint-splattered overalls, hair tied up with a pencil, covered in wax and dreams. We made our own rhythm. Dinners by the fire in winter, late-night drives in the summer with the windows down, chasing the scent of honeysuckle and the sound of good music. She'd rest her bare feet on the dashboard and sing over the radio, off-key, always louder during the chorus. There was trust. Deep, unspoken trust. She told me about her childhood, how her mother left when she was 12, how her father never quite recovered. I knew she carried abandonment like a shadow, even if she rarely spoke of it. So I did what any man in love would do, I made her promises. Quiet ones. Daily ones. I showed up. Again and again. And for the longest time, I thought that was enough. Even when the studio got quieter. When her candles gathered dust. When she started volunteering at the shelter every weekend, saying she needed to feel useful. I didn't ask questions. I didn't press. I figured people change. Maybe she needed space to find herself again. I believed the best of her. Always. She was still kind. Still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Still laughed at my bad jokes over dinner, though the laughs came softer. Fainter. Like she was laughing from a different room. But love makes you trust silence. Makes you believe in good intentions even when the words stop lining up. So I let her go, weekend after weekend, packing her duffel bag, kissing her temple, saying, "Be safe. Come home soon." And she'd say, "Always. God. Always." It's strange what you remember when things start to fall apart. The details burn brightest. The color of her sweater the first time she lied to me. The scent of cedar on her skin when she said she needed to get away from the noise. The pause before she said she loved me, that half-second delay that didn't used to be there. But I didn't see it then. Or maybe I didn't want to. Maybe it's easier to be blind than to accept that someone you love is walking further away from you every day, smiling over their shoulder while they disappear. I was the kind of man who filled the dishwasher and vacuumed the stairs. Who remembered birthdays and bought her sunflowers on Tuesdays for no reason. I thought that made me safe. Chosen. Loved. But the truth is, you can give someone your whole heart, your every breath, and still find yourself standing alone, holding the pieces of a life they quietly walked away from. It would take one drive, 3 hours south, to see that the woman I loved was no longer mine. And maybe hadn't been for a while. The lies didn't come wrapped in suspicion. They arrived gently, wrapped in routine. Claire was still Claire, warm, thoughtful, present in the ways that mattered, or at least in the ways I knew how to measure. She still laughed at my impressions of her old boss. Still curled up beside me on the couch, head on my shoulder, some documentary playing in the background. Still sent midday texts, thinking of you, grab milk on the way home, can't wait for Saturday. But her eyes didn't linger anymore. And neither did her body. Saturday mornings used to be sacred. Our time. Pancakes, coffee, NPR humming softly through the kitchen. She'd shuffle in wearing one of my flannel shirts, hair messy, lips still sleep-swollen. We wouldn't say much, we didn't need to. That kind of silence was warm, earned, filled with the kind of knowing that years of love create. Then came the volunteering. She found the shelter online, said it helped her feel grounded. They need someone who can do the overnight shifts, she'd said, stirring her tea. A lot of the animals are traumatized. They don't sleep well. It's better if someone's there around the clock. Of course, I supported it. That was Claire, heart first, bleeding for the broken. She'd always had a soft spot for lost things. So I nodded. Told her I was proud. Kissed her goodbye as she packed her overnight bag, rolled up an old sleeping mat, threw in a copy of Jane Eyre she never traveled without. But she never came back tired. Her hair would be freshly washed, her skin glowing, lips tinted with something new. She'd walk in wearing clothes I hadn't seen her leave in. Said they were from the shelter's donation box. Can you believe people throw out clothes this nice? I believed her. Because that's what love does. It believes. But the signs began stacking like stones in my stomach. One weekend, she came home humming a tune I didn't recognize. It wasn't a melody she would have heard on the radio, it was older, low and slow, like something you sway to with someone's hands on your waist. When I asked her what it was, she blinked like she'd forgotten she was humming at all. "Oh. Just something one of the volunteers was singing," she said, brushing past me toward the laundry. Another time, I reached for her phone, just to check the weather. It was locked. Claire never locked her phone. When I asked about it, she didn't miss a beat. "Oh, yeah, new software update. It auto-locked everything. I'll fix it later." She didn't. A week later, I came home to find her sitting in the studio she hadn't touched in months, staring out the window. There were no candles burning. No scents of lavender or rosemary or that strange combination she once called stormwood. Just her, still and distant, like a photograph of herself. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, but didn't look at me. "I'm just tired." Tired. That word again. It became her answer to everything. Sex. Conversation. Connection. I told myself it was just a phase. Burnout. Compassion fatigue. That maybe the shelter was demanding more of her than she let on. So I started packing her snacks. Slipping handwritten notes into her bag. Just little things, reminders that she wasn't alone, that I was thinking of her, that love was still alive in this house. She never mentioned them. Then came the night I called the shelter. I don't even remember what the reason was, something about her allergy meds, or maybe I just missed her voice. It was raining outside. The kind of slow, steady Portland drizzle that turns the streets into mirrors. I was in the kitchen, stirring soup on the stove, our dogs sleeping in their usual spots. I dialed the number, expecting to hear the weary voice of one of the staff, maybe the guy with the thick glasses who always answered the phone. But it was a woman. Polite. Uncertain. "Claire," she repeated when I asked for her. "Oh, no, I don't think she's been around since January." I remember going still. Completely still. The spoon slipped from my hand into the pot, splashing broth over the stove. I didn't even flinch. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice too calm. She apologized. Said maybe I had the dates wrong. Said she could check again, if I wanted. But I didn't need her to. Because something inside me cracked open in that moment, not shattered, not exploded. Just, opened. Like a curtain drawn back to show a room you didn't know existed. And I knew. Not the full picture. Not yet. But the outline. The shape. The possibility. Claire was not who I thought she was. And I was not where I thought I stood in her life. The next Saturday, I followed her. I didn't plan it. I told myself I wasn't that kind of man, the suspicious type, the tracker, the cynic. But something in me had shifted, quiet and irreversible, like the earth tilting ever so slightly off its axis. I didn't sleep the night before. I lay next to her, watching the soft rise and fall of her breath, counting every second she felt like a stranger beside me. She left just before noon. Kissed my forehead. Said, "I'll be back Sunday night." I nodded, handed her a thermos of tea, watched her walk out the door wrapped in her volunteer hoodie and a lie that now smelled like perfume I didn't recognize. I waited until she hit the freeway, then I grabbed my keys and followed, 3 car lengths back, heart pounding, palms damp. She didn't head south to Eugene. She turned east. Toward Bend. 3 hours of winding Oregon highway, for trees bowing overhead like sentinels, my thoughts louder than the engine. What would I say if I was wrong? What would I do if I wasn't? I kept waiting for her to take a turn that made sense. Maybe she was picking something up. Maybe there was another shelter. Maybe there was an explanation I hadn't imagined yet. But she never turned. She pulled into a modest apartment complex on the edge of town, white stucco, 2 stories, tucked behind a Shell station and a bakery. Her car idled in the lot for a moment, then she parked in the second row. I slowed as I passed, ducking slightly, pulse thundering in my ears. I found a spot down the street. Waited. She walked to a staircase and climbed it. Apartment 204. She knocked once. And then the door opened. He was younger. Mid-20s, maybe. Hair mussed, barefoot, wearing one of her old t-shirts, a faded blue one from a trip we'd taken to the coast. It still had the tiny bleach stain near the hem from that time we cleaned the porch together. I couldn't breathe. They kissed like it wasn't new. Like it wasn't wrong. Like they'd done it 100 times before and planned to do it 100 more. I stayed in my car. I didn't move. Didn't cry. Didn't rage. Just watched. And in that stillness, everything I thought I knew collapsed. I had loved her with my whole life. Given her every softness I had. And she had found someone else's arms to fall asleep in. Not because I was cruel. Not because I failed. But because she chose to leave without ever walking out the door. I sat there for almost an hour. Long enough for the sun to start dipping, casting long shadows across the lot. Long enough for the tightness in my chest to numb. The apartment stayed dark, no lights flicked on. Just stillness, like the world itself was holding its breath. I couldn't leave. I couldn't knock either. Instead, I stared at the second-floor window and imagined the things I couldn't see, Claire barefoot on the carpet, her laugh low and private, the hum of music playing from a Bluetooth speaker. I imagined her hand on his chest. Her fingers curled in his hair the way they used to in mine. I didn't even know his name. But I knew how he made her feel, freer than I did. Or maybe just different. Different enough that she'd built this second life 3 hours away, wrapped it in the scent of stray dogs and good intentions, and handed it to me with a smile. When I finally started the car again, my hands shook. Not with rage, but with restraint. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to beg. I just wanted the truth. Not whispered. Not softened. Just clean. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in our bed while she was gone, staring at the ceiling fan and the ghost of her shape beside me. The silence felt different now, not empty, but saturated with every lie she hadn't said. She came home Sunday evening, same as always. Tossed her bag on the chair, kicked off her shoes. I watched her from the kitchen. How was the shelter? I asked. She hesitated, just for a second. A flicker. Then she smiled. Exhausting. A new litter came in. I didn't sleep much. No shame. No guilt. Just fiction, delivered with practiced ease. I set the kettle down too hard. It clanged against the burner. She looked up, startled. What? I turned to face her. My voice was quiet, level. Claire, where's apartment 204? Her mouth opened slightly, not in confusion, but surprise. Like a mask slipping. Bend, I added. White stucco, next to a bakery. She didn't answer. I took a step closer. He's young. Taller than me. You gave him my t-shirt. Still, nothing. Just the sound of the ticking clock above the fridge. Finally, she exhaled. Sat down at the kitchen table like her knees gave out. I didn't want it to be this way, she said. I laughed, but it came out hollow. You mean you didn't want to get caught? She looked up at me then. And I'll never forget what I saw in her eyes, not defiance, not apology. Just sorrow. The kind that comes from knowing you've broken something you once believed would last. I tried, she whispered. I really did. I nodded. Tried to what? Love me? Or leave me slowly enough that I wouldn't notice? That did it. Her eyes flashed. You think this was easy for me? You think I woke up one day and decided to betray everything we built? No, I said, voice hardening. You didn't wake up. That was the problem. And then the fight started. Not loud at first, but sharp. Precise. Words became blades. You stopped seeing me, she said. I was fading, Jonathan. Every day, I disappeared a little more. You never noticed. I noticed everything. I just trusted you. I needed more than trust. I needed to feel alive again. The room was spinning. I gripped the back of a chair. So you found someone with better lighting and fewer responsibilities? He sees me, she snapped. And I broke. My fist slammed against the counter. I see you, Claire. I've always seen you. Even when you stopped looking at me. Even when you started lying to my face with that same voice you used to say, I love you. She was crying now. Silent, streaming tears. But I wasn't moved. Not yet. Did he ask about me? I asked. Did you tell him I packed your bags every weekend and kissed you goodbye? Did you tell him you still sleep in our bed, still wear the ring I bought with 2 months of savings? She shook her head, slowly. I didn't tell him anything. And that's when I realized she was right. She hadn't told him. Or me. Or herself. She had split her heart in two and let us both live there, never asking which door would lock first. I walked out that night. Not to punish her. Not even to leave her. Just to find a place where her silence wouldn't echo so loud. I checked into a motel that night. One of those forgettable places off the I-5 with a flickering vacancy sign and a vending machine that swallowed your quarters without blinking. The air smelled like bleach and cigarette ash. The bedspread had a strange pattern that looked like it had been designed to hide stains, not beauty. I didn't care. I dropped onto the mattress fully clothed, shoes and all, and stared at the ceiling until the patterns blurred. There was a dull ringing in my ears, not sound, but absence. The absence of her breathing next to me. The absence of the life I thought we were still living. Sleep didn't come easy. When it did, it came in broken pieces. Half dreams of candlelit dinners, of our first dance at the wedding, of Claire laughing in the rain outside our first apartment. I woke just after 4, heart racing, breath caught in my throat like I'd surfaced from underwater. Grief is strange. It doesn't hit all at once. It arrives in waves, small ones at first. Then, when you least expect it, it rises, towers, crashes down. That morning, the wave came while brushing my teeth in the motel bathroom. I looked up into a cheap, warped mirror and saw a version of myself I didn't recognize. Hollow eyes. Unshaved jaw. A man too quiet for his own life. I didn't cry. I just sat on the edge of the bathtub and breathed through it. That's when it began. Not the healing, not yet. But the stripping away. The slow, almost sacred shedding of denial. I called into work and told them I needed time. No lies. Just, something happened at home. My boss didn't ask questions. Said take the week. Maybe she could hear it in my voice. Or maybe she'd been there, too. I drove back to the house on Tuesday. Claire was gone when I arrived, at the studio, I assumed. Her car was parked out front, but the house was quiet. I didn't wander. I went straight to the bedroom and packed a single bag. A week's worth of clothes. My camera. My sketchbook. The books I loved before marriage made me too busy to read them. I paused at the nightstand. Her ring was still there. Lying flat, careless, like a coin someone had flipped and forgotten to catch. I left it. No notes. No accusations. Just space. That afternoon, I checked into a cabin out near the coast, the kind we used to rent when we were still us. It overlooked the water, quiet but not empty. That first night, I lit a fire, poured myself a drink, and sat on the porch with nothing but the sound of the waves and my own heartbeat. I thought of the man she chose. I wondered if he knew the sound she makes when she wakes from a bad dream, or the way she dances when she's alone and thinks no one is watching. I wondered if he knew what it cost to love her, truly love her, not just in the light, but in the shadows. And I realized something. He didn't take her from me. She gave herself away. Not to him, not entirely. But to something I couldn't follow her into. And that wasn't mine to stop. It's been 4 months. 4 months since that Saturday drive down to Bend, since the lie collapsed, since the life I'd built with my bare hands cracked open and bled into something new. I've been rebuilding, but not in the way people think. Not by jumping into distractions or chasing closure. I haven't filled the silence, I've learned to sit in it. That cabin by the coast became my anchor. I stayed for 3 weeks. Long walks. Simple meals. No timeline, no performance. Just me and the ocean and a stillness that at first felt unbearable and then, slowly, like a kind of home. I'd forgotten what it meant to just be, without proving, without chasing. Claire reached out once. A text. I'm sorry. I know it's not enough, but I needed to say it. I stared at it for a long time. Then turned off my phone and went back outside. That was the day I started sketching again. Not designs for clients. Not commissions. Just lines and shadows and shapes. A crooked tree. The curve of a tide. My own hand. There's something sacred about doing something for no one. Eventually, I moved out of our house in Portland. Sold my half to Claire. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want revenge. I wanted air. I wanted a front door that didn't echo with memory. I rented a small place near the river. White walls. Big windows. Nothing on them yet. But for the first time in years, I sleep through the night. There are still mornings when I wake up and reach across the sheets, expecting warmth. Still moments when I smell rosemary or see a green velvet dress and feel a punch of memory in my ribs. But those moments don't undo me. They just remind me that love, even when it ends, leaves traces. And not all of them are meant to be scrubbed clean. I've learned this. People don't fall out of love all at once. They drift. And if you're not careful, you start mistaking the drifting for distance. Something fixable. Something temporary. But by the time you realize you're alone in the boat, the shoreline's already gone. So you swim. And eventually, you find your own current. I've made peace with not knowing everything. Why she chose him. Why she kept lying even when she could have come clean. Maybe she didn't know how to let go of me without looking like the villain. Maybe she was scared. Or tired. Or both. But I know this much. Her betrayal wasn't about me being unworthy. It was about her being unready. And that distinction, that small but vital difference, saved me. So here I am. 37. Divorced. Starting over. And somehow, not broken. Not bitter. Just, awake. I make my coffee slow these days. I listen to music while I shave. I write things down, not for anyone, just so I don't forget who I am when no one else is watching. Because if this story taught me anything, it's this. Be careful who you build your world around. Make sure they're not just passing through. But more than that, choose yourself. Not when it's easy. When it's hardest. Because that's when it matters. That's when you find out who you really are. And that man. He's worth everything.